Okay, welcome. Hey, my name is Meg. I'm the hippie mama if you've seen me on social media. And so I'm really excited to be sharing this with you. And this is my program of Levels of Liberty. And so I'm going to do a screen share and we will get started. It's going to take a second because that's always fun. All right. Oh, hit the wrong button. There we go. All right, Levels of Liberty with the hippie mama. That's me. All right, so we're going to go ahead. And the whole idea with Levels of Liberties is to teach your children correct principles so that they can govern themselves. Because if you have children, you don't want to be micromanaging them all the time. You just want to teach them what is right and really good principles so that they can go on and govern themselves and live really good lives and full lives, right? Become responsible adults and kind of know how to manage these things. So it takes a lot off your plate, right? A little work in the beginning, but it's just a lot of mentoring, and then you turn it over to them, and it's super awesome and super freeing. As a mom of a big family or even a small family, right? So the reason this kind of got started is because you have a lot of kids or you have a few kids, but kids in general, you have kids. And as they're getting older, a lot of times they want privileges and they want, like, I want all these things. I want that, but I'm not actually willing to work for it. I just want to complain to you so you can give it to me. Maybe you're tired of yelling and fighting and contention in your home. I have 5 sons, so I get it. Like wrestling, I have a couple of daughters too, and so the emotion side of like throwing a fit and being upset, but also the physical side more with the boys. And it could be either way. That's kind of what it is in my home. But like there comes a point where it's just too much. Maybe poor communication. This is one that was a big one, as I have teens now, and they have jobs and places they need to be. And I didn't know who needed to be, where, when. And I kind of was becoming a slave to a schedule, and I didn't really want it anymore. Let's see, so learning to balance, and it kind of goes with, but them turning this over to your kids, balancing their work if they have a job, schoolwork, family life, like how do I balance all this, and friends too, and all that stuff, and kind of living this balanced life. And then I also didn't want a complicated system that was just going to make more work for mom. That's funny. One of my kids recently was saying something, and my husband looked at him and goes, but mom would have to manage that. Do you understand? They're like, well, but it's only for one. He goes, no, there are 7 of you. Like, we're not putting this on mom. We're putting it on you. So it's just turning a lot over to your kids. And like, this is your life and you get to manage it however you would like to. So what is Levels of Liberty? And it's basically, it's a simple system, because I love simple, where kids learn to master skills. And as they master a skill, they earn more liberties. And the liberties could be around the house and eventually into the community as the liberties advance and the levels advance. So it is as simple as possible. When I start, I always want to differentiate the difference between a privilege and a necessity, because a lot of times kids say, oh, I need this. And I think, oh, wait, I want this. You don't need this, right? There's a big difference. So some of the necessities that I will never, ever take away from my kids is love and food. And I almost put basic food because it doesn't mean candy or dining out or doing things like that. But I always make sure we have food in the home, water, shelter. And shelter doesn't mean your own bedroom, right? It could be like maybe you share a room with 3 siblings. I have 2 kids per room. No, that's not true. My girls share with the baby. So there's 3 kids in that room. The other rooms are 2 kids per room. So, but they all have their own beds, blankets, all those types of things. There's always a roof over their head. And then I will always provide basic clothing. And so, like I said, basic stuff, not always name brand. I'm sorry if you can hear my little guy. He's sad out there. But I will always provide those basic things. So some privileges could be a phone, TV, hanging out with friends. Friends are a privilege. Did you know that? Like, you don't have to go with your friends. Yes, it's really nice to have friends and it's really great to do all these things, just like having a phone is fun and watching TV is fun, but you don't have it to have it in order to survive. And you could argue like, well, if I don't make friends, then I'm not going to date and I'm not going to get married and move out. I get it. But like, you don't have to have it right now in my home to survive. So friends are totally something to earn. They're a privilege. movies, social media, name brand clothing, car, and I put video games on there too, because I know that's another big one. A lot of kids are like, well, these are my games and whatever. It's totally a privilege. You don't just get it because you live here and you're alive. So kind of differentiating between those, like they're two separate things. Necessities will never get taken away, right? Like if you see a little kid in a foreign country that doesn't have a lot, they're so happy for a rock and a stick. Like, this is so fun. And so it's not a necessity to have a big toys or all these big fancy things, right? So separating the two of those things. So what does level of liberty actually look like? So I'm trying to teach my kids how to live a balanced lifestyle. And basically, as I'm mentoring them so that when they move out, that they aren't like shell shock, I don't know what to do, but that I've mentored them with all these little skills that they can slowly master thing by thing. And as they master it, they get more liberties, right? And just as an adult, I have all these liberties, but it comes with a lot of responsibility. Like I have to pay bills and I have to pay taxes, going grocery shopping and filling my car up with gas, right? And so if I'm not doing these small things, and then all of a sudden you're 18, 19 and you move out, and it's like, what? I don't even know how to cook for myself or clean for myself. So it's just this small process of teaching them how to live a balanced lifestyle. So we divided it up. I say we because my husband helped created it, and he would love credit for it too, because this was his acronym. And so if you hate it, it was him. But if you love it, I was part of it. But it's FEMSISes, right? So like you can chant it if you want, but FEMSISes, FEMSISes. So what that means is these are the 6 different skills that I'm always mentoring. My husband and I are always mentoring our kids to develop these skills in these 6 areas: financial, emotional, mental, physical, spiritual, and social. So that's like the basics. And I'm going to go through each of these skills. So before we do it, I kind of start with the end in mind. What do I want my kids to have financially? What skills do I want them to have before they leave the house? Emotionally, how do I want them to be before they leave the house? Mentally, right? And kind of going down that list and writing it out so you know, like, this is the path that's going to get them there. Because if you're like, well, financially, I think this is kind of good, but you don't really know what you want for them to learn, what skills you want them to learn, what principles you want them to learn, then it doesn't really matter what you do. So if you have kind of the end in mind, and it can be like loose. If your kids are all little, like it doesn't have to be in cement, but like, I think it would be good to have maybe $5,000 saved in the bank when they're older, or something like that. Maybe being able to wash your own clothes. But as you get advancing, and they then turn 8 and 10, and you're like, oh, they're capable of a whole lot more than I thought they were, then you can totally adjust it, right? If your kids are in the teenage years, you probably have a better idea of where they want to be, what they need. And so you can be much more clear. So once you know the end game, all you're doing is just giving them small steps to get there, so that they have like, here's what I want for you, and here's this road to get it. And it's super awesome. So I'm going to show you what I have for some of our FEMSISes and what my kids' roadmap is. So first is finance. My husband is actually, that's his career, his finances. So this one speaks loud to him. Some of these ideas were, one of these ideas at least, was from The Richest Man in Babylon, of like really good principles of finances. And you can, I mean, we could talk to a blue in face about good principles of finances, but these were the basic principles I wanted my kids to know. Is they wanted them to know how to track their spending. I have, my oldest is about to turn 18, and so they make money. Like, your kid can make a couple $1,000s, and then all of a sudden it's really fun or easy to go and spend it, right? And so as he was tracking his spending, and I was teaching him, like, so he wasn't in the negative, like, I'm doing great. But then we broke it down and said, okay, let's see what you spent your money on. And he realized he was going to the store or fast food joints a lot, and he was spending way more than he wanted to on silly, simple things. So just by the habit of tracking your spending can make you keep a lot of your money. Because then you see like, oh, I actually, like, I have a lot of clothes, and I realized I spent $100 on clothes last month, but I didn't even need them, right? And so finding out books, so that's another thing that I spend money on. I know some of my kids do too. But if you're tracking it, then you can go back and see it and then forecast, like, okay, I know I make, or if you're self-employed, like, this is what expenses we have type thing, and being able to track them. And then the next is, I am a member of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints. And so we do pay tithing. So when my kids get a paycheck, we would pay 10% to the Lord, and then we pay 10% to ourselves. And the 10% to yourself is from The Richest Man in Babylon, a really great book on finances. And so that we teach them to live off 80% of what they are making, which is an awesome skill, whether you are 16 or 26, 36, 46, right? Like being able to live off 80% of your income is an awesome skill, and you're going to be able to save a lot of money. And then we ask them to have a certain dollar amount in their savings account. And I just left dollar signs because for everybody it could be different. But ours is around $4,000 that we want them to have saved up in their own account. All right, the next one is emotions. First step is taking 100% responsibility for your emotions. Now that probably sounds like a lot, but if you're mentoring them and showing them little by little, like you know the end game, right? And then you look at my 8-year-old, and sometimes when he's mad, he'll punch his brother. So obviously he's not taking responsibility for his emotions. He's angry and he wants to hurt somebody. And so his simple skill he's working on right now is to know what to do when he's frustrated, because there are always going to be things in life that you get frustrated about. So do you know what to do with that emotion? Because if you react and yell at somebody or hurt somebody, or maybe you run away and cry, like you are putting your emotions on somebody else instead of taking your emotions and just saying, I feel frustrated right now. I'm going to just feel frustrated right now, and I'm not going to treat you poorly because I feel frustrated right now. So it's a really, really great skill. And like I said, it's baby steps to get there. It's not like, poof, I'm going to put this all on top of you. Now, these next three principles with emotions comes from a really great book called The 4 Agreements. And sorry, I'm going to drink water throughout. And these are the first 3 agreements, and I kind of changed up the last one a little bit. But the first agreement is being impeccable with your word. Basically, I want my kids to be honest and kind with their words. Not only kind to other people, but kind about the way they speak to themselves, and being truthful in the way that they talk, right? And so it's really beautiful to be able to, I mean, honesty is just a great skill in general, but then being able, like, what is the self-talk and the self-dialogue you have in your head and the story you tell yourself, like, I am dumb, I'll never get that, I am ugly, or whatever negative self-talk you have. But being honest with yourself, like sometimes I try things and they don't work out, and that's okay, right? But being able to be impeccable with your word and building other people up, so not gossiping about others and stuff like that. I love this next one. Don't take anything personally. So this is being able to separate somebody's actions from the person. And so sometimes as a mom, you can do this when you see your kid, especially a younger kid, get really mad and they want to be like, you're so dumb to something. And you know it's because they tripped and they feel stupid and embarrassed. And so now they're going to react to somebody else. But when people start doing it to you, if you can separate their action from what they did, even if they're like, I don't like you, but being able to say, like, I know this doesn't actually have anything to do with me. That is my favorite thought, is that this has nothing to do with me. And so somebody cuts you off or is like mad at you on the road, to not take it personally. So how great to be able to teach your kids that. So brother comes in and he comes in your room and grabs something out of there, and you're like, he is so mean. Why does he hate me so bad, right? But to be like, that has to do with something he's going through. It doesn't mean that you just have to allow people to be rude to you or anything like that. But then you don't feel the fire of like, hey, what do you think you're doing? Where you, if you don't take it personally, then you can talk calmly to somebody, right? And kind of are in that mindset of like, oh, are you doing okay? Or like, hey, I understand, I can see that you're frustrated. It's actually not okay for you to come and take like my property, right? So if you're not taking things personally, you can be a calm and level-headed and being able to take those, like whatever people are doing it, and separate it from the person. And then the third agreement is don't make assumptions. And then I added the word negative assumptions, because if you can totally make assumptions, but why not assume the best in somebody? And so if somebody, let's say you're talking to your friend and your friend yawns. And so if you would make a negative assumption, it's like, well, I guess I am boring. Like, oh, they don't even like me, right? But why not always teach your kids to assume the best? Like, oh, are you okay? Are you getting sick? Maybe they were sick. You don't even have to ask them, but assume the best. Like, my story was fantastic. Like they were just tired because they had a late night, or they were up really early this morning. It doesn't, don't make it personal, right? Like it doesn't have to do anything with you. It has everything to do with them. Maybe they're tired, they're sick, you don't know what's going on. So assume the best. And the fourth agreement is on here is do your best, because you're human and you're going to make mistakes with this. And so, but like always be striving towards these things so that like the mistakes become fewer and fewer. And we're never going to be perfect in this life, but just to do your best. Okay, the next one is mental. I don't know why it takes a minute to change, but it does. All right, mental. So whether or not your kids are, I homeschool. So whether or not they're in school or homeschool, I put both. My two oldest sons attend a charter school where they just do college classes and they just go twice a week. So for them, they need to maintain a B- or higher, just because I know they're capable of it. I actually don't really care that much about grades. Somebody the other day was touting like, oh, they're straight A's. And I was like, great, they know how to pass a test, which is a great skill. But like your value isn't better because you are a straight A student. Your value always is the same. So maintaining a B- or higher lets me know that at least they're putting forth some effort and some work and learning how to do some schoolwork. It's been interesting for my kids being homeschooled to go into the school system because it's a completely different mindset. Because in homeschool, it's like I'm learning, and if I make a mistake, it's just, oh, I didn't learn it well enough, and I go back until I master it, right? It's not pass fail. So it's been an interesting thing for them to learn how to do that. But sometimes that's life, is learning how to pass tests. So I thought a B- was a good spot. So if you are homeschooled, I do require high quality work on assignments. And so as I'm mentoring this may look like redoing some assignments, redoing some, especially essays, going back and learning how to edit it on your own versus mom always editing it. Maybe going back and writing it clearer so your handwriting is a little bit more legible. So always doing the high quality work. It's funny, I did 4-H as a kid, and the cutest lady I did a sewing class with, she would always make me unstitch everything. She'd always say, I know you can sew a straight line, but like I didn't want to. I wanted to go as fast as I could, right? And as an adult, I don't sew a lot, but when I do sew, I'm like, it's actually not that hard to sew a straight line. Like, why didn't I just put in the time back then? But it's just that mentoring. And I always think of her when she was like, Megan, you can totally sew a straight line. But anyway, so high quality work. The next one is putting all events into the calendar. And I talked a little bit about that just a minute ago, is that with so many people, I have 9 people who live in my house, right? And so we have 4 drivers, but only 3 cars. And so we need to always know, like, if you need a car, we have jobs. And then I do allow my kids to sign up for one activity. And so I will drive the younger ones who cannot drive yet to their activities, but I need to make sure I have a vehicle. So there's a lot of things that as we are doing the calendar, and obviously I'm not requiring of a 5-year-old to put events in the calendar, but around 13, around now, the levels around that age, if they aren't putting it in the calendar, I actually won't take them, because I'm not going to worry about their schedules, because they need to kind of have some natural consequences, like, oh, this is why she needs me to put it in the calendar. Always great if you can have the why in there, like, why do I need to do high quality work, right? Why do I need to put my events in the calendar, stuff like that. And so this next one has a really good why of the high quality work with chores. And there is a really great, I think it's on YouTube, and it's an Army guy, Marine, sorry, I don't know which one. And he was talking about the importance of making your bed in the morning. And it starts then you've accomplished one thing, and then you can do another thing, right? And then this other therapist I like, he said, if you want to change the world, you have to start in your own life. Like, is your life a huge mess, but you're like, oh, but there's starving children, and there's these homeless people, and there's all these awful things going on. And so you go out there thinking, I'm going to go change the world, but you're a mess on the inside and the mess in your life. So if you actually want to change the world, it starts with you and in your own home and in your own space. So for them, it can be their bedroom, their spaces in the home, their yard, right? And being able to do high quality work with those, because then that change goes into, it comes out, right? And then you can change the world, because when you're able to master your own life, then you can start sharing it to the community, and your community can start sharing it out, and it has this big ripple effect. It's amazing. So that's the why behind the high quality work with your chores. And then mental, I really want my kids to know that learning is a lifelong skill, that it's not like I graduate high school or I graduate college and I don't have to learn anymore. And so I really encourage them to study 3 different books a year. And it can be on whatever they want. And so I have some musicians in my home. My second son is really into guitar and music. And it's so funny because I think if I would have required him to study music theory, he would have thought it was dumb. But I've put a lot of this onto my kids. And so he's studying music theory on his own, and he finds it very exciting and fun, and he's doing a lot of things like that. My other son, who enjoys writing, he'll read books about being a better author or creating stories, and he goes to, what are they called? Retreat type things where he learns all those skills, right? So whatever they want. And then I always love stuff with emotions, and I mean, studying all these things, it's fantastic. So I want him to read 3 books a year. Once again, end game. So maybe if at a younger age, it would be starting with 1 book a year or something like that they like. Okay, physical. Now, if you notice on this list, it says nothing about what type of food to eat, because even with principles of food, there's so much disagreement on here. You could be vegan, you could be paleo, you could be keto, you could be vegetarian, you could be like, I don't really care, you can do macros, anything like this, no sugar, whatever. So I didn't put even anything on here because I'm turning it over to you, and I've turned it over to my own kids as well. And I've kind of presented what a lot of the different diets are. I actually don't eat sugar myself. And so I let my kids choose. You can eat sugar, that's fine. I'm not going to buy it for you, but if it's offered everywhere, you can totally have it. Or you can have mom's like homemade all natural snacks when I make them. And so some of my kids have chosen to eat treats and some of them haven't. And sometimes they flip-flop back and forth, but they always feel really crappy when they eat treats. So they're learning more how to do it. So I don't actually put it on here. I just kind of present them different options with physical. But some of the things with physical is being able to do your own laundry. When they are littler, I will remind them and maybe help them fold them if needed, or even load them for them. They just bring the basket to me and then we fold together, right? Up to my kids doing it all the way on their own with no reminders, which is awesome, because when you get older, you care a lot more if your clothes stink, or if your cute outfits are in the laundry, then you are motivated to do your clothes. And so I actually have 7 kids, and the 6 do all their own laundry now, and it is awesome. So I only do mine and my husband's, and then the baby's. He's only 2. And even the baby, I'm showing him how to fold his clothes. Obviously, he won't be able to load it in the washing machine anytime soon, but he's learning how to fold his clothes. So that's super awesome. Hygiene, being able to shower every day, and these are all without reminders, right? Shaving for the boys, their face, brushing teeth, flossing, clipping nails. I didn't know that was a skill that like didn't come natural to people. Like, oh, I do have daggers. I really should do something about that. Wearing clean clothes, and then that goes back into being able to do your own laundry, right? So just great principles and skills to have. And then I do have them exercise 3 times a week, and I do not care what their exercise is. I just want them to move their body. So some of my kids actually CrossFit or run a bike. Some of my kids just like a simple walk or yoga. I don't care what your exercise is. Every exercise speaks differently to everybody. I just want them to have healthy habits for a high quality life. And then being able to cook 5 dinners and 3 breakfasts. And so, like I said, mentoring them at the beginning. So when they're cooking chicken, nobody gets salmonella and is vomiting all night, to them doing it all on their own. I love when my son makes tacos, and he seasons the meat way better than the rest of us. So if it's a taco night, everybody's like, I hope Ethan cooks it because it'll taste better, right? But these are all skills that they will want when they're moved out on their own. It's like, it won't be the shell shock. Like, my laundry doesn't magically get folded and put into my room, like, or not knowing how to, or somebody telling you, stuff with the hygiene, but being able to cook for yourself, like, those are really great skills to have. Okay, social. Now this one isn't a black and white, like 3 times or 15 minutes, right? So this is a little bit of gray area where I individualize this very much, but learning how to manage time on social media. So some of the things my kids can earn is a social media account, and then learning to manage their time on it. Just as a side reference for parents, if you did, like, whether you have a Google, Android, or iPhone, you can go into settings And then with your kids, say, how much time do you think you need on social media? And then in your settings, you can actually switch it to 5 minutes, 20 minutes, 30 minutes, whatever you guys decide on. And then it will block out for the rest of the day and will reset every night. So that's a really great time for them to learn, like, oh, this is 15 minutes on social media. This is 30 minutes, and you guys get to decide that time together. Managing time with texting. That's, we kind of have a rule that phones are turned in at a certain time, because you don't need to be texting at midnight or beyond, or even 11 o'clock sometimes, you know. And learning to manage like phone not texting during meals, or if we're doing something, right, just really learning those social things. Now with managing, balancing friends and family, whether, like, I have kids who are introverted and I have kids who are extroverted. And so some of my introverted kids, it's actually about getting out and like going to a social event once a month that isn't something that is church related or a family party, but like you took initiative to go to a party or invite somebody to go do something, or if you're older, go on a date. And then with the other ones who are incredibly extroverted, who would go with their friends from sun up to sundown, it's saying, okay, not every day and not every hour needs to be with friends. And so it's really good to have, that's like all of these are individualized. We'll talk about that, of those skills. And that, like, you just get to, some kids want to always be with their friends and some kids never want to leave the house. So kind of, what's the word I'm looking for? Individualize it for each child. And the last one is spiritual. And so this is what works for my family, and depending on what religion you are, or like what is important to you spiritually, you can totally change this. But for us, I want them to be able to read their scriptures 5 to 7 times a week. To say 7 times would be awesome, like always 7, but it's not always realistic. And I want my kids to succeed as much as possible. And so 5 is much more realistic for them, especially like a Monday through Friday. Sometimes like weekends get busy or they just forget, but like 5 for them was something that they knew they could do. And then anything else is icing on the cake. We do encourage them to attend the temple once a month and do family history 1 time a month, and read 1 religious book a year. And the religious book could be anything. So C.S. Lewis has a plethora of awesome religious books, or maybe like there's a gospel doctrine question you really like. I want to understand this topic, or I want to understand the book of Revelations better, right? And so kind of turning it over to them, like, what religious book would you like to read? And so just kind of turning it over to them. So those are kind of the end game of the goals we have for our kids with their levels of liberty. And then we can make a plan to get there. So here's an example of my 8-year-old skill. And I would like to give the warning that he is not a typical 8-year-old. So he's number 6. And the first 5 kids are born 6 years apart. So they kind of get raised as a whole. And then he's 3 years behind him. So he's super competitive and he wants to do whatever they're doing. So he keeps up with them a lot. So if your 8-year-old is your oldest, his or her skills might be a little bit less. Or maybe they're more advanced than this. And so, but like, this is just to give you an idea. So he has a little printout of this, and I actually have it in a, what do they call it? In my Google Drive, and one of those spreadsheets, and they all have access to it. They can't edit it, but they can see it all. So they can always have access to what their skills are that they're working on. So he needs to work on paying his tithing and savings without reminders. And all of these are really to be able to do without reminders. He likes to try to make as much money as possible selling stuff and bake sales and Kool-Aid stands and whatnot. So he has money. And the fun thing, because he's seeing his older siblings track their money, he actually tracks his spending, even though it's not required of him yet. So it's really fun to see, like, he's always had to live with levels of liberty pretty much. And so he's advanced a lot more levels than the other kids did earlier. So it's really fun. So he emotionally, he's learning what to do when he's frustrated. And he is so cute, just like totally biased. But he's kind of like this strawberry blonde kid, and he has the cutest little freckles on his face, and his big old adult teeth have come in, and you just want to squeeze him and hug him and tickle him and love on him, and he gets totally sick of it. And so he's learning what to do when he's like, I'm done, I'm out, instead of punch his brother, kick or scream, right? He's learning what to do when he's frustrated, not call names. So he's learning what to do with those emotions when they do come, of being able to just talk to somebody and like, this is what I do when I am frustrated. Mental, he's working on this high quality work with his chores, just like probably every 8-year-old. And then my kids are required to do an extra chore every day without a reminder. And so he is working on those things. Physical, he's just working on doing showering 4 times a week. And maybe you're like, that's gross, but it is what it is. I'm like, that's all I can, like, brain power, but like it's hard for him to remember to shower 4 times a week. And so that's one of the ones he's really stuck on. Brushing and flossing 2 times a day. He's really good at the mornings. He's still working a lot on the nighttime one. Balancing time with friends and family. He's probably my most social child. And so that one's been the trickiest for him, to be able to be like, today is a family day, tomorrow's a friend day, or like, we'll just play it by ear kind of thing. And so he's really working on that one as well. He's really good about reading his scriptures 5 times a week. And so maybe your 8-year-old isn't reading, so don't feel bad. Like I said, this kid wants to keep up with everybody. And then once you're 8, you can get on to have a family search account, and have your own account, and you can work on family history. And so it's just a good thing to have them, for me, having them do something spiritual. So that's an example of my 8-year-old skills he's working on. And all of my kids look the same, where it's all the emphasis is broken out, and then what the skills are in each and every single one of them. So how many levels do I have? My kids, I always include my kids as much as possible. Like, this is your thing, right? Because when it's somebody else's, like, if somebody tells you to do something, you're like, whatever. But if it's your idea, you're like, I'm all in. So I try to give them as much ownership as possible. So my kids chose 7 levels. We did like number them 1 through 7, but then my kids also gave them names. And I like that I put on their cool names, because it's like super fun. But the Padawan, Ninja, and then remember level number 7 is Sensei. So that's what they can, and that's all, whatever liberty you want. And then it is a living document. And that just means that it is not set in stone. So let's say you start it and your kids are like, we think we just need 5 levels. And you get going and you're like, whoa, we need way more. So that you can kind of change it up. Maybe you start it and you're like, we need 12 levels. And then you get going and you're like, that's way too much. Let's cut it back a few. So as a living document, I wouldn't recommend changing it like monthly or weekly, but like try something after a few months. If it isn't working, like, oh, hey, how do we fix this? Like I said, always like keeping them in the loop as much as possible to give them as much ownership. So some ideas for privileges. Now, if your kids are all little, I would suggest don't like do all the privileges, because you may not know yet like what privileges you want them to have. Like, it might be great to say, like, I think at 12, a 12-year-old is super responsible and capable to have a phone. Or maybe you're like, no, I don't think they should have a phone ever. And then your kids get a little bit older and you're like, oh, actually, I don't mind this way, right? And so if your kids are all little, I would just start with some of the basic privileges, and maybe even do level at a time. Like, we'll just add privileges as our levels advance. My kids are 2 to 17. My oldest is almost 18. And so we have what all the liberties are, because he's almost mastered all his levels. He's on his last one. So for me, this is some of what ours are. Later bedtimes at each level. So a baby actually is like, they're level 1. And to be honest, they tell me a lot what to do with bedtime. But obviously, as they get older, then they have a bedtime. And it starts for us at 8:30. And then each level advances about 15 minutes until our level 5, when they don't have a bedtime anymore and they get to choose when to go to bed, because they are learning that skill. And it was funny, the first, I don't know, a few weeks or month, my oldest, when they got that level, stayed up as late as they could. But they had to still get up early and manage their time. And they realized quickly that it was pretty pointless to stay up super late. And since nobody was telling them when to go to bed, they have learned to manage their own time of when to go to bed. And they do stay up later than what I stay up, but they're learning to manage their time with that. Some of the things, especially with little kids, is some of those first levels that you may want just friends to come to your house or meet with friends at a park. And then once they advance, say, now it's okay, I can see that you have the skills to go to a friend's house. Like, I know you're not going to hit them or hurt them. I know that you are going to say nice words, right, if they're little, so that they can actually start going to friends' homes. We even have stuff that friends can then come over to our house if mom and dad are not home, or they can go to somebody's house if their mom and dad are not home, so that we have kind of, those are liberties that they can earn. Can go to the movies, mall, etc. without an adult. So if they want to go to a movie, or my kids love to go to the grocery store. Anybody else are like, I want to go buy my own food. It's probably because it's junk food, but they want to go do that. They just have to be at a certain level to go without an adult. Learning our computer password. So my older 3 know the computer password, and the younger ones just have to wait for somebody to log on for them. And then this is one of the ones I changed. Like I said, it's a living document that before my kids can earn a smartphone, I actually switched it to a flip phone very first. So it's a rev out around the age 12. And I want to say about level 4 that they can earn a flip phone. And this is so that they can manage that time with calling and texting before they are getting apps, because it's a little bit too much at first. Then they can eventually earn a smartphone, but that's going to be more around 16. And then also, that's kind of in a different order, but social media account, they don't need it at 12, unless like they've decided to be some amazing performer or something, then just have it through your account and manage it with them. But they don't need their own social media account until they're a little bit older. So that's one of the things I've changed. I put smartphone and social media account actually on later levels because it wasn't working to have it younger. And then dating, I do require them to have certain skills so that I know that they are going to, if it's my sons, they're going to treat a girl with respect. And my girls, that they're treating boys with respect and respecting, each of them respecting their own selves, the way they treat other people, the way they talk about themselves or with others, right? Having a lot of those skills. Or, I mean, with dating, it's so great to have a lot of these emotional skills underway, like, oh, I want to be with him or her because they make me so happy, but learning them that they are responsible for their own joy, their own peace, their own happiness, and not putting it onto another person is priceless. So I think that's like one of the skills that my kids have to learn. So how in the world do you start? Like, yes, like I love it. I want it all. What do I do? So first of all, your family is your business. So any successful business meets together. And it doesn't matter if you meet weekly or daily, but you need to be meeting. My family decided Sunday is our best day because people have jobs and they're all over the place. And on Sunday, we can guarantee that we have everybody here. Food is also a great way to encourage and entice people, like, come sit down to this feast. By the way, we're going to have family meeting. Call it what you want. We call it family meeting. We do it on Sundays. A lot of people that I worked with, Sundays is a great day for them, especially as your kids get older. If your kids are all a little younger, don't really have jobs yet, you can probably make any weekday work, morning or night. My cute niece, she does little mini meetings every day. They do their scripture study, and then they're like, what do we have on our schedule today? So during our family meeting, it's kind of where we discuss what do we want our family. And just like within our FEMSISes, we have our end goal. We have that with our family. Like, what do we want for our family in 5, 10, 15 years? What do we want it to look like? Do we want people to still keep coming back? Like in 5 years, my kids, I got married at 19 and had my first baby at 21. And so I could be a grandma in 5 years. And do I want my kids, like, I'm working on this relationship where my kids want to come back home? 10 years, for sure, I'll be a grandma. I better be, right? 15, 20 years, like, do we want to still be a family unit and still enjoy one another? Then the things we need to be doing need to help us reach that goal, right? You all know, like, if you're like, I want to lose weight, but I also want that cake. You kind of have to decide which one you want more. So if you have that goal as your family, then you can be like, I kind of want to yell at my kid, but I really want a better relationship with them more. So then you kind of have that goal in sight. We have a motto that's really fun. Some friends of mine have created their motto and got it made up in a fun thing on the wall and vinyl or had it printed. And it's really fun. Like, this is our family. This is us. And then within the family meeting, we decided on our levels and our privileges they want to earn. You'll see video games wasn't on mine because it's not really something that my family cares about, but maybe that is something big for your kids. Like, I want to earn to be able to play video games. And then you can work with them like, okay, how much is enough time? Or do I want to do like 1 day a week in a bigger bulk? So you totally get to work with them together. Like, they're like, I want to do this. And so sometimes it is tricky because if you're like, what do you want for breakfast? And the kids are like, donuts and candy, right? Like, yeah, that's fun. But so maybe once a week we can have donuts for breakfast, but we're not going to have donuts every day. So if one of their privileges is social media or a video game, it's like, okay, great, let's do it 15 minutes a day or 1 day a week for 1 hour. Like, what do you want it to be? So kind of giving them, you're mentoring them, right? They're a child and you're teaching them these awesome skills you want them to have. And then in family meeting, each week we discuss how people are doing. So within our family meeting, we actually have the FEMSISes and we go through, sometimes we go through long Sometimes it's quick, like if somebody's kind of stuck. So on finances, we may say like, hey, it was the end of June. How did you do? Well, I made $600 and I spent this much money. And then being able to break it down for some of the older kids. The younger kids, we could ask like, hey, is everybody up to date on their tithing? And if they're not, then we're writing the notes like, okay, this kid needs to pay the tithing this week. And there's no drama with it. It's just like, that's just what it is. And then on emotions, that's where there's a lot of mentoring with emotions. So my little boy, my 8-year-old, we had on there, if he's struggling with hitting his brother, like I'm sure I'm not the only one, we can say, okay, so sometimes these things happen. What do you want to do next time? So he's like, I already know I get frustrated, but what do I do when I'm frustrated? Besides hit my brother, what are other options I have? And then like praise him up and down when he chooses a different route besides hitting his brother. And he's doing awesome and he's progressing on those. And maybe one of my kids, it was when they got upset, they would start crying and run away and hide. Like crying is not bad. That's no problem crying. But like you still need to face a problem or still need to know like a skill, because when you're an adult and somebody says, oh, that's dumb, you're like, and run off and cry, right? You want the skill of being able to know what to do with those strong emotions. So that's where we kind of mentor a lot, is during our family meeting. And like I said, sometimes we can get through it really fast and sometimes we kind of stop. You want to know the funniest thing? The longest family meeting we've ever had was about bacon. We spent a whole thing on bacon, and there my kids' input is huge in our family because I want them to take as much ownership as possible. And so we were talking about finances and like, we want you to buy all this bacon. So I was letting them know how expensive it was, and they had to come up with like a good plan that it wasn't a ton more money, but they still could get bacon, and they did. But it was our longest family meeting. It was all about bacon. But we have figured out a plan and hopefully it works. But so yes, the family meeting is really big, because it's giving them the tools to help them to succeed. All right, so when do you advance someone? When you start, everyone starts at the baby level, even if they are 12. But in the beginning, older kids advance really quickly. So say one of their skills would be brushing their teeth, and you're like, my 12-year-old brushes their teeth. Hopefully yours does, or they're like mine, and it's like, hey, buddy, you're gonna start paying for your cavities. But like if there are some of these little skills that you've had in your FEMSISes, and they're like, well, in the beginning, I only have them pay their tithing, and my 12-year-old totally does that. In the beginning, I do this. So maybe in a week, they can advance 2 or 3 levels, right? But once you get everybody kind of where they are, like a good spot for them, like this is a spot for them for growth, it takes about 66 days to form a habit. And I want this to be a habit. And I've learned always the hard way that some of my older kids would get really good, so high quality work on just your room. And one of my kids did this really great for 3 weeks, and I was like, awesome. And they'd already like mastered all their other skills, and the room was our last part. So we are always super excited at a family meeting when somebody advances, and we're way excited, like, these are your new privileges you get. And then the next week they didn't clean the room because it actually wasn't a habit. And so it's about 2 months that I make sure that they do it. And it's great because now I have my almost 13-year-old, and he was like on fire for 2 weeks. And I was like, Mom, can I advance? And I was like, oh, remember, we need to make sure it's a habit. So you have to be able to do it for a few months. And totally fell off the wagon. And it's great. I'm so glad I didn't advance him, even though I kind of wanted to, because he's so awesome. But like, it's not a habit yet. And so he's going to work on these things. Once I do advance somebody, I never demote them. This is not like you're good, you're bad, you're good, you're bad. No, like I never demote anybody. Sometimes there are things I do with some of the privileges that come with the higher level. I will just say those privileges came with that level. So when you're doing those things in that level, you get to keep those privileges, if that makes sense. You can totally pick how you want to do it, but it's not going to boost anybody's confidence to demote them. They are human. They are going to make mistakes or mess up. So like being understanding and being forgiving with those things. Individualizing each child's goals is so key. So I have some kids who cleaning comes really natural to them, and some kids couldn't care less. And they're like, what mess is they're standing in a pile of dirty clothes, right? And so just a lot of mentoring and teaching them. And so my 8-year-old is already doing his own laundry, whereas that is a skill that some of my other kids got at 15. So it's totally individualized, and some of them can master. Some of my kids are really good with physical and exercising and taking care of their health and showering, and then other kids are like, I don't really care. So I'm always trying to help them succeed. So I individualize it at their level. So if they're really good with their physical, then I can give them harder things in physical, but maybe keep it a little bit lower in mental. Like, okay, you're going to just have your high quality be your bed, not your whole room. You're going to be able to make your bed really, really well. And that might require some mentoring by you and showing them how to do it, right? Not like, poof, go make your bed, but mentoring them how to do it. But individualize them so they can have success, and not being like, I'm on the same, like, have the same skills as my siblings and I don't know why I can't advance. It just might be not their strength. And so we're going to try to individualize it so they can have success. So, all right, moms, here's your ideas for your success in having this work. First of all, relax. Like, don't get all caught up in it and make this really difficult. Like, take a deep breath. It's going to be okay. This is just this awesome system to get something going. But like, to create something where your kids are governing themselves, it does take a little bit of work in the beginning. But it's just like, think of I'm going to use food because it's a good example. But when you start a diet, at first it seems really hard, but then when you've hit your goal weight, it's really easy to maintain. So think of it as the same idea. Like, maybe there's a little bit of the work in the beginning to get everybody on board and to know what they're doing, and then it's really easy to maintain. So just remember that. Don't take it personal if your kids are like, this is stupid and I want my video games and I want to do all this stuff. They're mad like they just lost their video games and maybe they don't have the skill yet of knowing what to do with their board. And so don't take it personal. You're not a failure. You haven't messed up. Like, you're doing awesome and you're great. And it's okay. They totally can be mad and you don't need to make it mean anything about you. My favorite, keep it simple, sister, to kiss. That's what that stands for, right? Keep it simple, sister. And so if it's getting too complicated, simplify it, right? Like, make it as simple as possible for yourself. And then it's a lot of reason kids like video games is the rules are very, very clear. So make everything as clear as possible. So there's not a lot of gray and muddy areas, because then it just starts like, well, you let this person do that, but you're not letting me do that. And you're like, well, it's because it was raining on that day and now it's not raining, right? So make it as clear as possible. Like, okay, you need to track your money and that's what this looks like. Or you need to save 10% of your income. So just make it as clear as possible, and then being willing to adapt. And as you work together as a family in your family meetings, and my kid's like, this isn't working, can we try this? And you're like, oh, I don't want to do that. Maybe take a leap of faith and be like, hey, this may work, because they may surprise you. They have some really good ideas, and being able to listen to them and saying, oh, this totally will work, these great ideas. All right. All right, the what ifs. What if my kid doesn't care about advancing? I totally have kids who don't care about advancing until they do. So my almost 13-year-old, like, his next level, he can earn his flip phone. He can go with friends without an adult. And right now he can't. So he's 12. He doesn't have a phone and he can't go with his buddy to the store or to the movies, and it's driving him crazy. So he hasn't cared about advancing for a long time until all of a sudden he wants those privileges. And so now he's working really hard to get those things. Remember, don't make this about you. If they don't care about advancing, it has nothing to do with you. They don't care. So just let them be at the level where they are and enforce those privileges, and don't give them, like, if I let my kid keep going with buddies or go with buddies to the movies, the mall, and then there's no reason to advance. So just make it very clear, right? And they can totally be mad about it, but like, if it's clear and they really want it, they will advance. What if I advance my kid and now they don't care anymore? That's why I always try to wait the 2 months of mastering a skill. And then if they don't care anymore after they've advanced, then they just can't advance again. And eventually it goes back to the first one. Eventually they will want those other privileges, those other liberties, and they will care about advancing. What if my kid is mad and frustrated with the system? This is why I like to give them as much ownership as humanly possible, because it is their system. I love with my little boy, my 8-year-old, who's way into Friends. If he calls somebody a name, he knows that he then loses the privileges of Friends. And because I need to know that he's not over to the neighbor's house, calling them names, insulting them or anything like that. And so now I just turn it over to him. Like, okay, you called your brother a name, so how many days of friends do you think you should lose? And he'll be like, oh, sometimes he goes extreme, like a year. You're like, okay, that might be too much. A month, I'm like, okay, that still might be a little bit too much. We met about 3 days. And I'm thinking, okay, 3 days is good. And then on day 2, he's like, Mom, I'm gonna go play with friends. I'm like, oh, remember, you don't actually get to play with friends for 3 days. And it's their system. So let them be mad at the system, kind of like, don't make it about you, make it about like they're mad at the system, but really they're mad at their own actions. So if you can help them see like you're just frustrated with yourself and that's okay. Like now you know it's why we don't insult people or call people names, right? Because this is some of the consequences. And the last one, what if my husband doesn't support this change? I don't know if there is a marriage on this planet where both of you agree 100% on everything. And I think my husband and I have a pretty great marriage, and we have the same end goal in mind, but a lot of times we disagree about how we get there. And so this isn't a like, I'm right, you're wrong type thing, but it may be saying like, hey, I know this maybe seems confusing or complicated, but let me just try this, okay? And what if he doesn't come to the meetings? Like, okay, that's fine. He doesn't have to. I don't want to throw my husband under the bus, but in the beginning, he wasn't super excited about it. And sometimes he'd get on his phone. And as we've done it for so long now, he's a lot more involved because he's seeing the fruits of the work that I've done. And so he's much more excited to be a part of it. I don't even know if excited is the right word. He's much more willing to be a part of it because he's seeing the rewards. He really loves the clear rules. Like, you do this, you get this. Then you can do this and you get this. And so it's very clear, like, this is how you get a phone. This is how you get to watch a movie, all these types of things. So I don't think there is a marriage on this planet that both of you agree 100% on everything. Maybe like you wanted to paint a wall blue and he's like, I really want gray. So sometimes you paint it gray even though you wanted it blue because there is some compromise. But if there's something you really want to try, you just say, I am going to do this. I would love your support, but it's okay if you don't, right? Because you know not to take anything personally. Because to be honest, the best way to do all these things is to model the behavior you want. And so you get to be doing those types of things for your children to see, like, this is a great thing. Like my husband and I, we had a disagreement and we're going to figure it out because that's what mature people do. And that's what I'm teaching you to do, whether it's with your siblings, your friends, people in the community, whatnot, right? You become that person. All right, you have got this. And if you have any questions, just send me an email. This is the longest email ever, thehippiemamablog@gmail.com. And I'm super happy to answer questions. And sorry, I'm going to stop sharing. There you go. And be there for you as much as I can. And if you need some clarifications or whatnot like that, just give me an email and we will set up a time to chat, or I'll just do my best to answer your email. But thank you so much and have a wonderful day.